it's not about perfect, it's about effort. And when you bring that effort every single day, that's where transformation happens. And that's how change occurs. So Jillian Michaels. So once again, another quote that is really applicable to strength training and getting started with strength training, because there's a lot of people who think that in order to start something as daunting to some as strength training is, that you have to be a particular sort of level of ability to be able to do it, and you have to get it perfect straight away. And in order to make these positive changes, that's just not true at all. You're only going to get good and closer to sort of this perfect that you might have in your mind by just taking an action and taking a small step and getting started, and then taking a small progression and building on that. It's never going to feel, when you're doing a new exercise or a new movement pattern, particularly against resistance, it's never going to feel normal and effortless and natural straight away. It's going to take a bit of time to get to there. And that's only ever going to come with consistent effort. And you can't just do this for 2 weeks and suddenly feel a lot stronger. You're going to have to start with some exercises, get comfortable with those, and then bit more effort in, add some resistance, bit more effort in, up the weight. And then over time, that's where you get stronger. And when you're stronger, that's where your enjoyment of other activities in everyday life is going to get so much more. You get more satisfaction from that, and your world's going to feel a lot bigger and open up more opportunities. And then that's where that how change occurs in that last statement there. It doesn't come from being perfect at strength training straight away. You're going to have to work at it to get strong. So again, that quote, it's not about perfect, it's about effort. And when you bring that effort every single day, that's where transformation happens. That's how change occurs. Good. So welcome back. This is another Q&A session that I run. So I'm here every Wednesday at midday. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about strength training, whether that's getting started, whether you've got started and you just want to know what the next step might be, or if you're struggling with any particular exercises. Please do use this opportunity to ask me any questions that you might have. There are no stupid questions. If you're thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it too. So by asking it, you're helping out other people as well. You can use, if you're watching on YouTube, there'll be a chat feature on the right hand side if you're watching this live, or you can use a comment if you're watching this afterwards. And if you're on Facebook, you can use a comment as well. Again, just ask the questions there. They'll pop up to me. I can bring those up on screen, and then we'll go over and answer together. If you're watching, it's been really good we're starting to get a couple of regulars in now. So Kim or Maggie, if you're in, it'd be good to say hello. And if you're someone who has been watching a few of these, but you've just been in the backgrounds, do feel free to just say hello, say where you're from, what point you were at, whether you started strength training or whether you've been doing it a while. I'd love to know who is watching this. So yeah, and the other thing, if you wanted to say thank you in any way, the biggest thing that can help me with spreading these videos to more people is if you could just click the thumbs up button underneath the video. And if you're not already subscribed to Never Told to Lift, then do take a second to subscribe. But for now, I'll get started. I've got a couple of questions that have been sent in since then. We just had Kim saying she's here. So welcome back, Kim. It'd be good to, I hope you're doing well. And is it week 6 now of your program? How are you getting on with everything? It'd be good to get a little update. So first question I've had sent in, and that's the other way you can send me questions, is if you go to chris@nevertoldtolift.com. So it's chris@nevertoldtolift.com. You can email me any questions in and I can bring them up, and they can be anonymous if you're not quite happy sharing them on YouTube or Facebook. But for now, the first question is, I can't find a comfortable position for my shoulder during squats. Do you have any solutions? So this is quite common. So a lot of people start to lose a bit of mobility in their shoulders, and they just find it painful being back here. And if you're doing a barbell back squat and the bar is resting across your back, your shoulder is going to have the ability for you to get your hands onto the bar in order to do those squats. And there's a lot of people that do find that's just uncomfortable, and they end up kind of twisting, and then they feel they're not in a good position to do the squat in the first place, purely because of the shoulders not letting them get to that position. So there's a few things that might help. Firstly, you can change, if you're still using a barbell, you can change the position. So rather than a back squat, we can look at potentially a front squat. So we rest the bar more across the front, and you tend to have your hands, so if the bar's here, we tend to have our kind of it resting across the fingertips, across the chest, and the same on the other side. Tend to have the elbows slightly higher, and the weight of the bar keep the hands down there. The problem with that can be quite uncomfortable for people in their wrists if they're back here. Cat's back again. And they find that whilst the shoulder's in a more comfortable position, the wrist is in a more painful position. So they struggle to do that. You can adapt that by just having your hands here, and you can kind of just have your hands slightly on top of the bar, and then as you're coming down, you tend to find, as long as you're not leaning forward too much, the bar stays in position. It keeps you a bit more upright, so it does change the mechanics of the lift slightly. So it kind of favours the quads a bit more than the glutes. But yeah, that is one solution. The other solution is just using dumbbells. Excuse me. And you can use dumbbells either by your side and hold them by your side, or you can hold them kind of here in a similar position that you might do with a front squat. Issue with the dumbbells is as you start to go heavier, particularly if they're by your side, often the grip strength starts to let you down, and that fatigues earlier than the legs do. And the point with the squats is we're trying to get the legs muscles to fatigue so they get stronger. Having them up here does tend to help a bit more because you're not having to kind of hold the grip, it's just supported in there. But sometimes as you go forwards, they might want to start leaning forwards, so you're having to work with the arms a little bit more. So that is one solution. Dumbbells can be effective, but as you go heavier, they tend to be a little bit more difficult to control. And then if neither of those are working, then leg press is a really good option. So the leg press, you don't need to hold anything or grip anything. Your arms can be down by your side. You're working the muscles in a very similar movement pattern to a squat, so you're getting the same kind of action and same benefits in terms of strength. The only thing you're not quite getting is the fact that a squat, you're working your balance a little bit at the same time, whereas a leg press, you're fully supported. And whilst it's great for building strength, it's not always good. It's not always necessarily going to carry over as much as a squat will. I did want to mention one last bit of kit that your gym might have available if you're in a gym. Unfortunately, not all gyms do, but this is called a safety bar. So as you can see, it's kind of normal in terms of the barbell being across, and then you've got the padded section in the middle that rests just on top of the bottom of the neck and top of the back. And then you can see there's kind of two padded sections that are dangling down and with handles at the bottom. So you can see there, that's where my hands would be if it was a normal barbell. And again, if you haven't quite got the shoulder mobility, that can be quite uncomfortable there. So with the safety bar, what we can do is grab the handles down at the bottom, and then as I come back in underneath in a second, I can then get in position, start to do my squats. My upper arm is right down by my body, so I don't need to put it in a position that's uncomfortable for me. I'm not limited by the fact it's restricted. I can hold those handles, do the squat, come back in as normal. I'm not limited by grip strength. The weight is just rested on my back, and that is another great solution. So that is called a safety bar. So not all gyms have it. So if you can't find one, it's often worth speaking to the gym, because I do know a couple of patients who have gone to their gym, showed them a bit of kit and said, would there be any chance the gym can get it in? And then they have gone out and bought one. So they've got a budget for equipment, and if enough people ask, they can bring those in, and it does open up the squat to more people who thought they wouldn't have been able to do it. So yeah, do ask there. Obviously, if you've got a home gym, you can get those, and if you just search safety bar on Amazon, you'll be able to find them there. But yeah, I think that's it for the shoulder solutions. So if you're watching this and you had any questions about that, then let me know. Also, I'll be interested, has anyone used a safety bar? And what was your experience with it? So do leave a comment below if you've got experience with the safety bar. So I'm just going to hide that. Kim says, Yep, you're doing well. Week 6 and form is definitely getting better and feel more flexible in the squats. So yeah, that's good to hear because often you don't necessarily associate strength with increased flexibility, but quite often a stronger muscle feels more flexible. And there's a little bit of a quote you might have heard out there is stronger for longer. So if you can get, or strength for length. So if you can get stronger, you often find you grow what we call the sarcomeres in the muscle, and your muscle actually gets longer and more flexible. So if you're trying to increase flexibility, strength is a great way of doing that, as well as just stretching. And you've got the added benefit of being stronger. I did cover that a few weeks ago, so you can search back on there if you wanted to learn more about that. I've had a couple of questions that have come in the last hour or two. So the first one is from Roxy. So Roxy says, may I ask, how do you know when you're ready to up your weights? I'm unsure about either doing longer reps and sets or push to go up the weight. Sorry if it's a bit of nonsensical to the knowledgeable, but I'm interested, and you are so knowledgeable in this group. Thank you. Thanks for saying that, Roxy, and good to hear from you. So yeah, there's a couple of ways of thinking about this, but initially, it depends on what your goal is. And for most people, the goal as we're getting older is to build and maintain strength, as opposed to focus too much on size or endurance or anything along that side of it. So if we're then looking at strength, in order to build strength, we need to push the muscles to fatigue. And ideally, we really need to be pushing the muscles to fatigue within 15 repetitions. So if you're doing, say, 15 repetitions and you were reaching fatigue, so if you ask yourself how many more could I have done, and the answer was 0, 1 or 2, then you've got it spot on. You'll be building strength as an outcome of doing that exercise. Now, the longer you do that for, the easier that's going to feel. So by the time you get to your 15th, you might now feel that you probably could have done 5 or 6 more repetitions, or we call them repetitions in reserve or reps in reserve. If you felt you finished at 15 and had 5 or 6 more reps in reserve, then you're now not pushing sufficiently enough to build muscle strength as an outcome. And if you did the 5 or 6 more and now you're doing 20 repetitions, whilst pushing to fatigue, it's still beneficial to some form, because it's now, after so many repetitions, we're not really in that anywhere near the strength range of repetitions that we want to build strength. So that's the point where you do want to increase the weight that you're using to try and bring the the fatigue point or failure point of that exercise back to 15 repetitions. And ideally, you'd carry on gradually increasing over time, or increasing the resistance over time, so that you get down to kind of 5 or 6 repetitions as your maximum. And you could even go beyond that if you wanted to, but anything kind of 5 or less, that's where you really get a lot of strength if you're reaching fatigue at that point. Whereas 15, you do get some strength, but you're also getting some endurance and some hypertrophy in that size. So that's hypertrophy is increasing muscle size. But the point is, if you're finding your exercise that you're performing is starting to feel easy and you could do more, that's when you know you're ready to increase weight. The only thing I would say is make sure you're increasing the weight slowly, so small incremental changes to double check that your body is going to react and adapt to that well, and you're not suddenly going to flare up a joint or an existing pain. Because some people they do take big jumps up in the same way someone doing marathon training might suddenly go from 5k to 10k and double their mileage and then wonder why their knees start to flare up. Whereas actually, if you follow the training programs, you're looking for a 10% rise each, or weekly mileage is changing 10% at a time. The same is with weights. I wouldn't make changes much more than 10% from the last session you did. So gradually build up. But yeah, if it's feeling easy, add a bit of weight and try and keep the fatigue and failure point somewhere below 15 repetitions. If you're watching this live, Roxy, let me know if that's answered your question as you wanted, or if you've got any follow-up questions from that, or if anyone else has got any follow-up questions, then please do let me know. Let's hide that one there. So next question that came in the last couple of hours by email is, hi Chris, I've had both my hips and my left knee replaced in the last 18 months. Can you tell me the best way to start getting stronger, please? Have just started getting to the gym again. Thank you. So yeah, so firstly, well done for already getting back to the gym, because I imagine they weren't all done at the same time. So whereas your first replacement might have been 18 months ago, the last one's probably a lot more recent than that. So to be back in the gym is brilliant. So in order to start getting stronger, it kind of follows on from what I've just said with Roxy's question there, is that we need to find what exercises you're currently able to tolerate. And if you've had them replaced, you've probably got some restriction in, particularly with the knees, in terms of how much flexion you have got and how much you are able to do with load. And you might still be getting some pain or discomfort. So we don't want to, again, make any sudden changes too soon. So I'd imagine you've probably worked with the physiotherapists after each of the surgeries to incorporate some form of strengthening to a certain level. So you've probably done a squat to some form, and other exercises around that. So initially we do want to try and make sure that we initially get used to the exercises, learn what you can tolerate. So if it's a squat, it might not just be the fact it's a bodyweight squat. We might have a limit to how deep you can go. So you might start going down to a box or a chair rather than a full depth squat. You might already be doing some with load. So again, what weight can you tolerate at this stage? And eventually we want to start getting to the point where you're pushing the muscle to fatigue again. And that's how you do build the strength. But equally, by trying to find the weight that you need to push the muscle to fatigue, we might also cross a threshold of where your knee starts to react and flare up a little bit. Or it could be the hip, but probably more likely to be the knee. So we might have to move a little bit slower in order to make progressions there. We also want to bring in some form of hip hinge. So that could be a deadlift or something similar along those lines. That's going to challenge the hips a bit more and not so much the knees. But again, having had a hip replacement, we've got to check that the hip's going to react to that. So again, we want to find out what your starting point is, what the lowest point is, and then gradually build on from there. I suggest probably adding in some form of lunge. So I tend to start with a split squat, but it might be a half depth one rather than lowering your back knee all the way to the floor. Because the lower you go, the more strain it's going to put on the knee, which it might not tolerate yet. So we might put a couple of Pilates blocks or yoga blocks underneath and lower to that before you come back up. And then it's good to still include upper body and core in there as well. But primarily after hip and knee replacements, it's the legs that we're going to try and look at. So some form of squat, some form of hip hinge, and some form of lunge. Get confident with some variation that you are able to do, and then start to add a bit of weight to it. We could also add some isolation exercises. So if you're in the gym, you're probably going to have access to a leg press, to knee extension or hamstring curls. So it's good to add those in. But same principle applies. We want to push the muscles to fatigue. But I suppose, if you are looking for help getting started, you might well be interested in... Cat's rubbing the face on the microphone. I'm not sure if you're hearing that. You might well be interested in this ebook that I've got. It's completely free for download. It's going to guide you through the steps to create your own strengthening program, and it's going to include variations for each movement pattern. So like the squat, the hip hinge, and the split squat. It's going to have a suggested exercise, but also it's got a regression option and then a progression option. So if you can't do a bodyweight squat, there might be another version of it that you can do. So it's well worth checking that out if you're looking for a starting point and help finding the starting point, because that's the hardest bit. Once you've found the starting point, progressing from it becomes easier, and you've always got something to fall back to if the knee does react or flare up. So if you're interested there, so nevertoldtolift.com/start-here, and that link is in the description below. If you did feel like you wanted a little bit more support, then I also have the Stronger for Life course, which is the same theory and same concepts, but it's just delivered in a little bit more of an interactive fashion. It's all video based. You can access that from phone or computer, and in that you're also going to get access to me via weekly group Zoom calls. So you can come on, check in with everybody, and anyone who's ever signed up to the course is invited to those calls. And you can give some progress, but also ask any questions, or if you've got any sticking points, or you want help modifying an exercise around the pain, then that's something I can help with. So that might be something you're interested in. So again, that link is in the description below, but it's nevertaughttolift.com/course. I mentioned at the start that Kim gave us a bit of an update on her progress, and Kim's been working through the ebook, and hopefully you can attest that it's helpful to get started, given that she's on week 6 now. So yeah, definitely do check that out if you're interested. And the next question does actually relate to those slightly. So I had someone email regarding the course this week saying, can I be too unfit to join Stronger for Life? So whether that is we're talking about Stronger for Life course, or whether we swap that just for can I be too unfit to start resistance training or strength training, the answer is going to be the same here. So it's relevant for whether you're interested in the course or not. But the answer is basically no. People have this assumption that you have to have a certain fitness level before you can step in the gym and start to do these exercises. And it's similar to the quote at the start, that rather than getting to that point then starting, you get to that point by starting. So it's taking those first steps that will build the fitness level to allow you to do more. So it's just going to be, if you're really feel you're unfit, you feel like you're getting out of breath with anything small that we do, then we want to modify, and you might have to do less and take bigger breaks in between sets and repetitions that you do. But we want to start and get the body used to doing a little bit, and then once it's used to doing a little bit, we can add a bit more and increase the intensity and do a bit more from there. And if you're finding you probably find that you can't get to muscle fatigue yet, because the fatigue levels in terms of just being cardiovascularly out of breath, that's a bit that limits you. But eventually that will then you'll feel fitter, you won't get so out of breath, and then actually you can push efficiently enough to get the muscles to fatigue. And that's where the strength is going to come from. But you're never going to get to that point if you don't start first. And if we can build the fitness level in relation to getting used to doing strengthening, that will help. So again, if you are interested in Stronger Life, then that it will talk you through that in more detail. And if you're struggling with the fitness levels, then that's something I can definitely help with in the group calls that we do there. And then one last question that I've prepared. So if you are watching live and you've got any questions, or if you're watching this afterwards and you've got any questions, then do comment with those questions. And then either in this call or whether it's in a future one, next week, I will answer that call there. But this one was, how can I progress my strengthening exercises if I don't have access to more weight? So this is quite common. A lot of people tend to find they've got a set amount of weight at home. So they might have a set of adjustable dumbbells up to 20 kilograms or up to 40 kilograms if they've got the barbell attachment as well. And initially that felt like it was an unachievable amount to actually lift that much. But actually, as they got started, they realized that they were far stronger than they realized. And they get to a point where they've kind of maximized what they're using there. So obviously the logical next step is to buy more or join a gym where you've got access to more weight, and then you can continue to progress. But if that's not an option straight away, there are a few other things you can do. So one of my favorite things to start to do with someone who's a bit more, isn't right at the complete beginner stage, they've started to build up and they've got some confidence with the exercises, is start to focus things a bit more unilaterally. So rather than having both feet level when you do an exercise, we can look at either stepping one leg slightly further forwards than the other. So we call that staggered stance. So that the leg that's further forwards is in a position where it can't really help as much. So if your left leg's forwards, your right leg is going to have to do more of the work. So you can do more repetitions with the same weight with the right leg behind, and then you can swap and do it with the left leg behind. But because it's no longer 50-50 and the weight evenly split, the 40 kilograms you might have on your back, whereas it was effectively 20 kilograms through each leg, it might be now effectively 30 kilograms through one leg with 10 through the other one, depending on how far you put your leg forwards. We can use the same staggered stance option for a deadlift or Romanian deadlift. Again, for the arms, rather than have a barbell with all the weight on one, you could try and get all the weight onto one dumbbell and then just do single arm. But yeah, unilateral type exercise is a really good option. Slowing the exercise right down. So we work in the muscle, and we call it time under tension. So rather than do it at the pace you've been doing it at, if you really slow it down, you can do the same number of repetitions, but the total time that your muscle is working for is a lot longer. So the total time under tension for that muscle to work adds up to be a longer period of time, which means you're working that muscle a lot harder, which means it's a lot more challenging. So that's another option. Opposite to that is we can actually speed the exercise up. So you might, often it's a case of slow on the way down, and you can do it a lot more explosively. So move with intent on the way up. So when you're doing a squat, you slowly come down and then drive up quickly. Slowly come down, drive up quickly. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but there's something we call rate of force development, and it's the ability to access the strength we've already got quickly. So firstly, we need to build strength and make sure we've got strength. But if we can only ever access that strength slowly, if we need quick reactive strength, sometimes we can't react quick enough, and that's where we might still have a trip or a fall. Whereas we've practiced doing things quickly with intent at speed in a controlled environment like the gym, when that might happen and we might stumble or we lose our footing, we can quickly get our foot in front of us, and we can then absorb that momentum that we've built by the start of the falling process. So that's, again, another option. If you use the same weight, you can just move with more intent. So that's 3 options straight away that you can do. So there are so if you've only got the same amount of weight, you can start to do things unilaterally rather than with both legs together. We can start to do things a lot slower, so increasing the time under tension, or we can do things faster, so we're bringing in that rate of force development, or that almost like plyometric type movements. The other option is you can completely mix things up and just pick a whole new selection of exercises that are slightly different variations, and that will kind of challenge you in a slightly different way. But eventually you're probably going to want to get access to more weight, so you can either buy more from home, or that might be now your confidence levels are up and you're feeling confident with lifting 40 kilograms. People then tend to feel a lot more confident to step into the weights area of a gym and not feel too daunted or intimidated there, because often people are intimidated because they just don't know what they're doing, rather than it being an unfriendly environment. And once you know what you're doing, you step in, you realise actually it is often a very friendly environment in there, very welcoming, and people aren't going to be looking at you. Everyone's too focused on themselves anyway. So I would encourage you to start accessing the gym if you get to a good point, but equally I know it's not for everybody, so doing things from home is fine. And that's, again, you might want to start upping your home gym equipment at that point. Good. So that is everything. We're coming up to the half-hour mark, which is generally how long we do this for. So I'm going to be back next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. If you do have any other questions, now is your last chance to ask those if you're watching live. And once again, if you're watching this as a recording, then do use the comments or send me an email, chris@nevertooldtolift.com, and I will address those questions in next week or a future week. Whilst I'm just waiting to see if any other questions do come in, let's just hide that there. Just a quick reminder, Never Taught to Lift ebook, completely free to download, nevertaught-to-lift.com/start-here. If you did want to get your hands on a Never Taught to Lift t-shirt or hoodie or anything else, you can go to nevertaught-to-lift.store, and there's some stuff you can get there. And then if you are interested in the course, it's nevertaught-to-lift.com/course, and that's the Stronger for Life course. But for now, if there's no other questions, then I wish you all a great week, and I look forward to catching up next Wednesday at 12 o'clock.